Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
Evelyn was furious. She wanted to tear, throw, and smash the dishes, especially the one his parents had given her and John for their wedding. The exquisite set produced by the famous porcelain factory was not a pity, and it is desirable to break saucers and cups with recognizable cobalt mesh and heads, unfaithful quite the opposite, the husband and his mistress. Well, and let the beautiful porcelain perish, let the cheaters and vile duplicitous person suffer. That's what they should do. Let even I and Evelyn have to answer for this deed, even towards myself, betrayed by the man I loved. There was no pity. The soul was filled with resentment, anger, and a desire to get even with John, who, as it turned out, had not only cheated her, but also wanted to eliminate her. For him, his loving wife was just an unfortunate obstacle on the way to wealth. This Miranda is good too. Ready to be an accomplice to crime to help her lover achieve a dishonest goal. A burning mixture of emotions was pushing Evelyn to reckless action, but the woman with the remnants of prudence realized she couldn't afford to give in to her emotions. Her tantrum would mean victory for that nasty traitor John and his filthy bedfellow Miranda. To allow her own defeat, Evelyn could not allow herself to be defeated. Wow, just 15 minutes ago I was perfectly happy, and now everything in my life has changed so drastically that I'm dizzy. My husband has a mistress, and this is his Miranda. She personally hired, was always satisfied with the employee, and even provided her career growth. When Miranda complained about the deterioration of her health due to work in the kitchen, and said that she would look for a job in the office, she offered her a place as an accountant. Yes, Evelyn, you're a terrible judge of character. The woman scolded herself mentally. Out of all the options, she chose John, the one who had recently heard with his own ears, so cunningly and cold-bloodedly discussing with his mistress a plan to eliminate his wife. I want him to be so cunning and judicious that the law enforcement agencies have no questions for him because of his wife's premature death. Miranda, yuck, she's giving advice too. Interested in ridding her lover of his legitimate wife? Well, he's good. He wants to arrange the case in such a way as to stay in the maximum benefit. Almost no effort. That's where his law degree comes in handy. Although, as far as I know, John wasn't involved in criminal cases. But I can't say that I know him at all. How could I have ever imagined that in the company of his mistress, my husband would dare to eliminate me? Besides, who knows what kind of connections he has? It's quite possible that this nasty couple will manage to arrange the whole thing so that she, Evelyn, will go to the grave, and they will live happily ever after. Yeah, they're dangerous enemies. That's why we can't let these vile creatures know what they're up to. Otherwise, they will act even more secretly or accelerate the realization of a despicable plan in life. It is necessary to keep a cool head in order to expose the traitors without the possibility of getting away with it. Both John and Miranda must suffer the punishment they deserve for the dastardly deed they have so carefully planned, especially since the price of their success will be her life. An apartment and a little but still already profitable business. And after all, how wonderful and romantic everything began. The upset woman felt that tears were about to flow from her eyes and hastily parked the car in the parking lot in front of the nearest grocery store. Leaning back in her seat, Evelyn sank into her memories. During the period when she had met John, Evelyn's mood had been far from romantic. She was surrounded by the whirlwind of business associated with opening her own cooking shop, which planned to prepare baked goods from homemade recipes. Of course, it was much more complicated than using some already promoted franchise, but it was just such an original bakery. she planned to organize together with her childhood friend Molly. Their kind and trusting relationship had developed in high school, and then, although they had scattered to different colleges, they had kept their friendship almost unchanged. It was surprising, but romantic. And often flying in the clouds, Evelyn did not irritate straightforward and pragmatic Molly, and her serious advice often helped to avoid trouble. The tandem of such dissimilar girls was perfect, and in the cafe their roles were distributed long before the opening. Molly, who had a profession of accountant, was ready to take on all money matters because she knew them, and even, surprising her friend, with love and attention, shared the delight of a successful debit and credit. Evelyn, who had been trained as a pastry chef, just on the profile of the conceived enterprise, by that time had already worked for several years in a quite decent institution and learned many valuable nuances, about which nothing said teachers in college. With the registration of the company and the initial capital, the girls were greatly helped by their parents. But both Evelyn and Molly put out to the maximum, but it was still difficult. Far not stupid Evelyn very quickly realized that the experience was clearly not enough. Being an employee is much easier than managing everything yourself, but there was nowhere to retreat to, and the girls strived for their goal. On that momentous day, which turned absolutely everything upside down, Molly got sick, and Evelyn had to do the most unproductive thing in the world alone. Waiting, of course, the two of them would have been much more fun, but as it was solo, she tried to fill the time with something useful, cleaning, thinking about the menu again, as if she hadn't devoted nearly a few years to it. However, excitement kept her from concentrating, and the variety of sites on the World Wide Web helped not to agonize over the wait at all. The supplier promised to deliver the ordered furniture in the morning, literally from the moment she got up, but it turned out to be empty words. Evelyn during the day several times called, asked to wait for the car just a little bit. So Evelyn did not go far from the future establishment. She believed that in 15 minutes, and then in half an hour, the furniture should finally be brought, but after another reminder, she was informed about the suddenly appeared problem. And as a result, even by lunchtime, nothing had been delivered yet. We managed to wait for the furniture only closer to the evening. The assemblers, however, were clearly skillful and soon departed, leaving behind a nice-looking version of the room. Evelyn was incredibly happy that her long-held idea was about to become a reality. But as soon as she closed the door behind the assemblers, she realized how tired she was. She knew from experience that there were two very opposite ways to regain strength. The easiest, of course, was to eat sweets. However, this option threatened her already not ideal figure, constantly fighting with the extra pounds on her body. Evelyn tried as little as possible to give in to the desire to eat, too disposed to fullness and favorite profession and heredity. So the girl chose an alternative and even healthy way, a walk in the city park, which from time immemorial was called the Country Park. Although in modern historical reality, it was practically in the center of the regional capital. It was quite close to it from the future cafe. Accordingly, Evelyn, on the advice of her parents, chose this place. The location is good, and the park reminds of carefree childhood, in which visiting the park was a real holiday, even if you went there almost every week during the summer season. Evelyn always looked forward to it with joyful anticipation. On the evening of meeting John, however, the walk seemed to come with a catch. Evelyn had too lightly ignored the clouds in the sky, hoping to complete her promenade before the rain began to fall. The downpour came suddenly, and the trusty umbrella let down, took and broke, refusing to manage its life-saving dome. Evelyn tried to hide under a tree, stretching its crown over the paved path to call a cab, and almost howled in frustration. While the furniture was being assembled, the girl was so worried about the process that she forgot to put her smartphone on the charger. And here is the sad result. Such a necessary gadget now nasty beeped and turned off, discharged to 0. Of course, exactly by the law of meanness, at the most inopportune moment, Evelyn had to hurry to the stop, feeling how not at all in spring cold threads of rain, causing shivering. And then the water stopped raining down on her from above. It turned out that some stranger had sheltered her under his umbrella, nestled next to her, and pacing to the girl's rhythm, the man offered, "Girl, you're probably already soaked, of course, but let me protect you nonetheless." Evelyn was a little confused, but did not reject the help. After all, there were other hurrying park visitors around, and it was not scary at all. Besides, the stranger behaved quite adequately and did not offer anything reprehensible or indecent. Together they reached the public transportation stop. A lot of potential competitors crowded under the awning. Shuttles were passing by, and the streetcar that came by was so packed with passengers that only a few of the most active lucky ones managed to squeeze into the carriages. The stranger introduced himself and explained, "My name is John. You know, I was taught that once you help, you should never give up." Evelyn didn't want to go to her parents' house for the night, so they gave her daughter a ride to the driveway. There, to the girl's surprise, John was waiting for her. He had flowers in his hands, and it so happened that he as if immediately met potential relatives. The man held himself without embarrassment, but apologized to Evelyn's mom and dad. "Jenna and James, I apologize. I didn't think that today I was going to meet you, and I didn't prepare you and your husband appropriate presents. I promise to correct the mistake at our next meetings." Her parents were rather wary of the active, though very courteous John, but they could not influence Evelyn. She was completely enchanted by the man. He quickly became the most necessary person to her. The girl was a little disturbed that the relationship between her lover and Molly was turning out abominably. The girlfriend contemptuously wrinkled her nose when John gave her some compliments and did not hesitate to snap if he dared to make critical remarks. "Look, Evelyn, I understand the lovey-dovey, head-over-heels thing, but don't you notice how strange John's eyes are? It's like he's scanning the person he's talking to for easy and vulnerable weaknesses so that he can strike a devastating blow if he has to. His pupils dilate and constrict to the size of pinheads. Look, I wish you'd be more careful with him. Don't be in such a hurry to let him into your life." Evelyn tried her best to protect her lover. "Molly, you're not quite right. I mean, John does have a special, scrutinizing look, but that's just the cost of his former profession. He used to be a police officer, and then he decided to become a lawyer. Don't take offense that he criticizes you. He's just used to telling the truth. That red polka dot dress really turns you into some kind of villager. Remember what we used to say when we were kids? You look like an auntie mother in that dress." Evelyn did not even notice that John really often hurts and pokes, mocks her friend without any good reason. The walks together had stopped almost immediately. The man seemed to be polite, but managed to irritate Evelyn, causing an unpleasant feeling of jealousy because of the numerous and intrusive questions he asked her friend. He was interested in absolutely everything: where she studied, where and with whom she lives, what kind of accounting experience she has, and even in what store she prefers to buy clothes. In the end, he was tired of answering. Molly, who was not known for her humility and patience, burst out, "John, why on earth would you think I'm in your office being interrogated? Look around. We're in the lobby of a movie theater with Evelyn. You give her your attention and leave me alone. I'm sick and tired of your questions. I'm tired of making excuses for something I didn't do." After that, the girl hastily said goodbye to her friend and went home, not listening to the entreaties to stay. Since then, Molly generally tried to avoid communicating with her unpleasant person. Of course, it was impossible to completely exclude meetings, but she tried not to talk to John and even sometimes frankly ignored the questions he asked her. By the fall, the cafe had become a success. There were regular customers, including not too wealthy, but many students from the nearby university. Evelyn was overjoyed. Judging by the figures Molly had shown her, there was already a net profit. It wasn't much, but it was good. We haven't recouped our investment yet, the accountant reported. But if things continue at the same pace, then, according to my forecasts, by the beginning of February, we'll recoup everything and work in the plus. I'll have to think about it. Maybe we could do something special for Christmas. Evelyn understood that she had to work even harder so that the stable high income would allow her small team to be proudly recognized as a winner. Therefore, the quality must not be reduced and the assortment must be renewed. Her friend's idea turned out to be successful, and soon technological maps for painted holiday gingerbread were already being developed. Simultaneously with the growth of profits, another joyful event took place. John made Evelyn a proposal to marry him, and she, without playing the popular girlish coquetry, "Olga, I need to think," immediately responded with consent. Molly, on hearing the news, wrinkled her pretty face and gave her friend a shocked expression of her feelings on the subject. "I feel for you, Evelyn. That slippery John is clearly not out of love for you, insisting on getting married." Evelyn was incredibly offended at the time. "So you think I'm impossible to love? Is it because I'm fat? Well, you should know that John is perfectly happy with my figure." Molly tried to justify herself. "I'm not talking about your looks. You're fine with them. Although I noticed that in the morning, instead of a croissant, you chew oatmeal cookies with coffee without adding sugar and cream. I just suggest you take a closer look at how John behaves when he thinks no one can see him. It's like he's doing calculations in his head all the time." Evelyn got defensive about her lover, and finally that conversation ended in an ugly spat between the friends. They almost stopped communicating, except for work matters. However, neither the quarrels with her best friend nor her mother's requests to take a break and think did not affect Evelyn's decision. She perceived doubts in the groom as an insult to her personally. The girl was infatuated with John and married him. The only thing she went against her fiancé in was his desire for a prenuptial agreement. Wide a romantic Evelyn seemed that it lowers the bright feeling of love to a pragmatic deal. John did not insist, but at his gentle request, the gift money was used to buy the family car. Evelyn was not at all embarrassed by the fact that she did not have a driver's license at that time, and in fact, the car became the sole property of her husband. He sometimes drove her to work, but often their schedules didn't coincide. To get to work and back to her apartment, where she now lived with John, she had long been accustomed to public transportation, and her driving school tuition was constantly postponed because she was so busy. Business required constant attention. Competitors were not slumbering, opening nearby establishments of similar orientation. Had to constantly go half a step ahead, not only responding to demand. Gradually, after careful thought and calculation, we came up with new products. Some ideas turned out to be unsuccessful, but in general, the development of the business pleased both the owners and those who received jobs and decent wages. In the process, there were several not too pleasant cases when visitors tried to seek compensation for allegedly substandard products. But John intervened in the proceedings, and everything was settled in a pre-trial manner. For this intercession, Evelyn fell even more in love with the man. He seemed to her a real ideal. However, dissatisfied customers were the exception. Mostly visitors liked the institution, but business partners not satisfied with the results achieved. In the assortment appeared sweets made for people who adhere to good nutrition. Evelyn, though she was not immediately aware of it, was embarrassed by her sweet, vanilla raisin bun-like figure. She was annoyed by her own rounded knees, her chubby arms, the fat accumulations hiding her waist. Disregarding the advice of her mother, the young woman began to adhere to a strict diet. The regime of calorie deficit not immediately, but still went in favor of the figure, but from the former cheerful character is almost nothing left. Only trust in her husband was unchanged. Over time, Evelyn and Molly decided to expand their own network and open another cafe. Let it again lead to anxiety and turmoil, but there should be development. That's what the friends thought. Of course, Evelyn informed John about the idea, with whom she always shared all the news. "Honey, we have the money to invest in the expansion, although we will probably have to take out a loan to speed up the process." But Molly is optimistic. John, in response, has given his wife the benefit of the doubt. "You know, it seems to me that the cafe should have shown much better results. I don't want to upset you, but if you want my opinion, I'll give it to you." "Of course, John, I'm listening attentively." Evelyn encouraged her lover and heard something she didn't expect. In general, to be honest, without any offense, it is necessary to double-check how it is your kind. Molly keeps accounting. "I think she's taking some of the money out from under your nose, taking advantage of your boundless trust. Opening a new outlet, that's a lot of money to sneak around. She'll collude with the decorating crew. She'll make even more money off your naivete." Evelyn was outraged. "Oh, come on, John. Molly's like a sister to me. We've been friends since high school, and I have confidence in her." The man continued to insist. "I'm telling you, she's stealing profits, happy that you're naive and gullible. She's jealous of you, that's why she's doing it. And I'm afraid that's just the flowers, and she's saving the berries. Well, if Molly decides to punish you financially for your happiness, she once tried to charm me despite you. I regret that I didn't immediately turn on my tape recorder and record her calling you fat and suggesting that I start an affair with her." Evelyn didn't immediately believe her husband. After all, it's not easy to undo a friendship that has lasted more than 17 years. However, John, with the persistence of a man absolutely sure of his own rightness, continued to convince his wife that in the form of Molly, she had a snake in her heart. The second cafe was open, but the renovation of the premises was completely under John's control. Molly often complained to Evelyn that the estimate seemed excessive, but her friend reassured her. "John knows what he's doing." Stubborn Molly pointed both her friend and her husband to the lines in the printed table, openly said that some positions are not very real at all, but earned only a contemptuous statement. "John, well, of course, you only see the numbers. You probably compared the cost of services of some gastarbeiters and the prices of goods taken from old ads. You think you are someone else. What an expert in heels." Molly wanted to get into a verbal fight with her friend's husband, but Evelyn, trying to smooth the conflict, got into the argument. "You know, remember Pushkin's fairy tale. You can't just chase after cheapness. You yourself realize how important for the perfect result are quality materials and a reliable team. These figures also include the conviction that everything will be done quickly, professionally, without unnecessary nervousness for us." John and Molly exchanged hateful glances. The girl called Evelyn her husband a night cuckoo, but did not stop criticizing his actions, causing her friend's displeasure. The man also did not lag behind and regularly told his wife that she trusted her smarmy accountant in vain. Everything was complicated by the fact that Evelyn, although she admitted it to herself, hardly envied the slender and incredibly graceful, which without consequences for the figure, dainty buns, and in general had a very attractive appearance. The boat of friendship, rocking more and more strongly, which quite predictably led to disaster. About a year ago, a terribly unpleasant conversation had taken place between the friends. They then sat up in a closed cafe, from which Evelyn left, who had already done her job cleaning lady, and discussed the details of opening a new, already the third branch. John found a place for the establishment and even made a deposit from the family stash. After Molly said that the man offered a knowingly failed option, located in an unsuccessful neighborhood and obviously not for the simplicity of heart, overpaid. Evelyn took offense for her beloved and told her friend everything that accumulated on her soul. She even mentioned Molly's signs of attention to her husband. For a few seconds after the verbal outpourings of her friend, Molly was silent and then grinned. "Evelyn, I'm sorry, but everything you just said is complete nonsense. I swear I have no interest whatsoever in your precious John. More to the point, I despise him, and even kind of hate him for the way he's managed to shake our friendship to the state it's in now. Your John, pardon my bluntness, he's an opportunist as cunning and thoughtful as a nesting cuckoo. He systematically destroys all competitors for resources, remaining the only and favorite. You yourself think with your head. He lives on your territory, drives a car, which is registered to him, but bought with your money. You almost completely updated his closet. Remember at your leisure and count how much he contributes to the budget of your family. In fact, it's time you opened your eyes. Can't you see that this John of yours is just pitting us against each other? How can you be so naive? If we're having this conversation, John was trying to flirt with me, not me with him. But it didn't work out, so I told him to fuck off. When that stunt didn't work, he decided to eliminate me from the people you trust. Well, I'll tell you what. I vouch for my work. Everything in our business is good with accounting. Even an additional independent audit you can order. But I'm warning you, it's a waste of money. If all you care about is John's peace of mind, then we're not going anywhere. I'm sick and tired of him meddling in everything, even in matters he has no idea about and turning you against me. So along with the accounting firm, get an accountant. After this total distrust, it's unlikely we'll be able to continue working as before. How then Evelyn was angry, indignant, and a little frightened. After all, John had warned her that this was exactly how Molly would respond. So her husband was right about everything else. The audit was conducted. No irregularities were found. And no matter how hard Evelyn tried to talk her friend out of quitting, Molly was adamant. The question of her share in the business was also solved when Evelyn, with the help of John of course, stammered that she was ready to pay a certain amount. In addition to the share of authorized capital, the girl agreed, although in her eyes was clearly visible contempt. "I hope you realize what you're doing." Coldly, Molly said, "I refuse my participation in the business and leave the founders only because I do not want to have anything to do with the family, which is ruled by a despicable man. I just want to give you one last warning. Don't dissolve into him. He's not the kind of man you can trust unconditionally." As it seemed so convenient at the time, Miranda, the pastry chef, told the owner of the cafe that her health was making it difficult for her to work in the kitchen. She took Molly's place, and Evelyn simple-mindedly all this year did not even think about the fact that everything was somehow successful and well put together. She just had no time to think again, and she couldn't suspect her husband. She still loved him blindly. John had become everything she could be, lover, friend. There was no one in the spacious hall, and the woman was ready to shout a greeting, but suddenly she heard her husband's voice in the hall potentially suitable for the kitchen. Not understanding what had come over her, Evelyn tiptoed closer and realized that John was speaking not to the builders, but to his mistress, and it seemed to be her, his lawful wife. Most of all now I regret that in due time I did not persuade this cow in love to sign the contract. I would have laid it out so well that it would have been hard for her to figure it out, and after the divorce, she would have been left with nothing. Then you and I would be on fire, but for now, it's just the way it is. The familiar female voice, which Evelyn easily recognized as her accountant Miranda's, rebuked her crankily. Let's at least go out tonight. Go for a walk or rent an apartment, shall we? It's a bit extreme. John sighed expressively. Oh, Miranda, I'd invite you over. But my wife's mother might show up at the apartment at the worst possible moment. Her lovely daughter will be here tomorrow, and she'll think of all sorts of fatty goodies. She herself is fat, and she has raised her daughter the same way. Miranda's voice spoke again. Well, John, you're not quite fair. Yours has lost a lot of weight lately. Unaware that Evelyn was standing a few meters away from him. John laughed. Well, scrawny cow, not yet a quivering doe. Sagging skin, though she's trying to do some exercises, but she's got a nasty temper. That's like you, not a woman, but a feast of the soul. And body. Miranda said flirtatiously. Yes, Miranda and body. I myself would like to enjoy your company in a comfortable environment, but for now I have to hide. But that's okay, we'll bury this fatty and take every penny. Evelyn held on only on moral willpower. There was a great desire to appear in front of her lovers and express their indignation, not shy in expressions. However, the next phrase Miranda literally made stick to the floor. No, John, it is desirable to cremate Evelyn. Then we can live without fear. After all, in that case, no one will be able to find out the real reason for your widowhood. There was both admiration and something like fear in John's voice as he answered his mistress. You're a dangerous little thing, Miranda. Do you watch too many detectives? You're right. Cremation is the perfect way to hide the ends, but not in water, but in fire. I'll probably have to talk to her parents about burial arrangements, but I think I can convince them that the option I'm proposing makes sense. It is unpleasant that they too will be heirs of the first turn, but it is also solvable. Again, from the loss of my beloved only daughter, there's not much that can happen. I believe you will think of everything in the best way. Miranda squealed enthusiastically. There was the sound of kissing, and instinctively recoiling from the revulsion that seized her, Evelyn caught a water bottle lying on the floor, which must have been left by the builders. Oh, John, Miranda exclaimed, I think I heard some noise in the next room. Oh, come on, it's nothing. The builders are long gone. Maybe a mouse from the slackness of unscrupulous exterminators survived. John began to calm his mistress. I think you just imagined it, but don't be nervous and don't get distracted. We'd have more pleasant things to do than chase mice, my kitty. Evelyn even covered her mouth with her hand to keep from screaming with resentment and disgust at the luscious tone of John's voice. Miranda continued to insist. John, please go and see what's out there. I can't relax thinking that someone is around or even peeking at us. Not waiting for Miranda to persuade John to check the room, Evelyn hurried away quietly so as not to let on that she was here and had overheard such an unpleasant conversation. Wiping away her tears, Evelyn picked up her phone and looked online to verify her husband's words. It was just as he had said. Since they hadn't decided to have a child yet, if something happened, her parents and the cunning, sneaky John would be the first-line heirs. The woman was horrified. So her mom and dad are also at risk. There was no doubt left. One must strike a preemptive strike against the traitors. Can't risk her parents, can't worry them either. Going home and pretending to John that she missed him, that she was happy to see him, and that everything between them was still the same, Evelyn was in no condition. Ironically, the only person to whom the woman treacherously betrayed by her supposedly loving husband and seemingly reliable employee could turn for help was Molly. Except, as a once resentful friend, would treat the request to at least listen and offer sound advice. Almost without breathing, Evelyn listened to the long beeps, and then finally, a vigorous greeting came from the speakers. "Hello, Molly. Please forgive me for everything. You were completely right. I'm in such a situation that I'm scared, terribly scared. Please meet me. I can't tell you everything over the phone." Molly had forgiven her friend, or she was gloating. Evelyn didn't care. What mattered was that she heard the words that were so important to her. "All right, come on over. You probably haven't forgotten the address. My parents are on vacation, by the way, or they probably wouldn't let you in." Unlike her friend, Molly did not want to live separately from her mom and dad. She thought with her rational mind that there was no point in getting involved in mortgage bondage, and it is better to save the necessary amount, little by little, so as not to overpay. Soon Evelyn was already sitting in the cozy kitchen and under the ticking of the antique clock, which since the childhood of her girlfriends were already in this very place, and having told about her problem, summed up. "That's the story. You can rightfully say that you warned me about not trusting John completely. I was wrong, and now I'm surprised I didn't notice what kind of person he really is. I guess the whole staff knows about his affair with Miranda, except for me." Molly shook her head as she listened to her friend without interrupting. "Even I didn't expect this from your husband, even though I've seen that he's a real scoundrel without principles or morals. I didn't think he'd be willing to do such a thing for profit. But I can't imagine how you're going to do it. Most likely the time is very little, because they have already decided everything, judging by what you say. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna say the nicest things. But since they're agreeing on cremation, it's likely that poisoning will be the method of your elimination. Probably the best solution would be to move out of your own apartment for a while and strictly forbid any food or drink from John and Miranda's hands. But there's a catch. Your enemies may not slip the poison directly, but simply place it within reach. Going to the police is probably useless and maybe even more dangerous than dealing with John on your own. I understand you didn't make a tape of the conversation between your husband and his mistress. And on top of all that, he may still have friends among the police. It's your word against his word, so it's a pretty good bet. John is a lawyer, and things may not work out in your favor. I'm also concerned that your parents are at risk. Even if you leave, as if on a long business trip or on vacation, they can override their plan and take care of Jenna's uncle and aunt, who, if it happened to you, would be heirs of the first turn. Feel sorry for them, and frankly for you too. You got yourself into this John of yours. Now you're gonna have to work hard to get out of it without getting hurt. So you can't run away, and it's dangerous to make a scandal right now. I don't know how the sweet couple of lovers will act then. We will have to win by cunning, but we must think it over very well." The friends began to think over the options, but the conversation was interrupted by Evelyn's call. It was John. "Answer it, but don't talk to him for long, or he'll be able to sense something wrong from your voice. Tell him you're tired and you're going to bed." Molly whispered her advice for some reason. John spoke to Evelyn sweetly and sympathetically. She almost began to doubt that she had recently heard with her own ears how her husband dreamed of the happy life of a rich widower, just as her friend had advised. The woman was more silent than speaking, and seeing the eloquent glance to wrap up, quickly ended the conversation by imitating a yawn. "John, I am terribly tired today. See you tomorrow." Making sure the call ended, Evelyn put the smartphone down on the table and grimaced, trying to hold back the tears that were bursting out. How could anyone lie so perfectly? If I didn't know he was dreaming of getting rid of me, I'd actually believe what he said about the separation being unbearable for him. Lies, so cynical, deceives, so unprincipled, speaks tender words, even with the slightest intonation, without revealing his true feelings and desire to destroy me. What kind of man is he? Molly consoled a friend who had almost become an ex for good. Unfortunately, it was obvious to everyone but you that your chosen one was a fruit. You didn't listen to anyone's advice, but there's no time to regret the past. You have to do something in the present, so as not to get into an even more difficult situation. Evelyn was horrified at how Molly was calmly studying the situation and only managed to ask something. "What am I supposed to do?" Molly continued to reason, saying everything with a stride so as not to unnerve her friend. "First of all, you should not panic. It won't help and may even harm you. I'm afraid that with the active assistance of Miranda, John has insured himself and withdrawn to secret accounts, probably opened on someone else's data, an impressive amount of money. Of course, if they expect to eliminate you completely, maybe they didn't make unnecessary movements. What's the use of making a fuss, and in case of unfavorable circumstances, risk being caught? If after a short wait, you can get a much bigger payoff. Anyway, the first point of our plan is to find out the details of their conspiracy. We need information like air, but only time, as I understand it, is short, catastrophic. I cannot even think of the right thing to do. Probably, it will be better to be reinsured, and your parents should be sent somewhere on vacation until everything is resolved. It will be necessary to lie low, to catch all the oddities, to reliably denounce the traitors. It would be nice to be able to listen in on John's conversations. But unfortunately, I don't know anyone who can get such equipment quickly. Do you?" Evelyn shook her head. "Neither do I. Besides, to be honest, I'm not at all sure I can play the part of a loving wife knowing John's meanness. I'm both scared and disgusted at the same time." Molly questioned the reliability of the strategy she had devised. "Yeah, I didn't realize that. You have everything on your face as well as on the screen, so we have to go to the bank. And the key to this scenario is surprise and a support group. Ideally, tomorrow morning, when John comes out of your apartment. By the way, the locksmith called by you urgently changes the locks. It is unlikely that your husband has had time. Poison added to your favorite coffee or other foods that only you consume. But categorically, I would not exclude such a possibility. So Evelyn better update your grocery stockpile for good measure. Next, to catch Miranda by surprise, you need to somehow lure her out of her workplace so that she, unsuspecting, has no time to clean up unwanted data or even delete it altogether. Well, next you file for divorce and the procedure of property division begins. Perhaps it will be problematic, but it will be a battle, as they say, with an open mind. On accounting, if you still trust me, I can check everything your independent auditors order. I think the chances of success are quite real. You could file a police report just in case John makes an attempt on your life, but he'll probably be afraid to act directly," Evelyn confessed. "Molly, I prefer the second option. I can't play that kind of game." Molly shrugged. "Well, that's fine. You're a straightforward and honest person, though you're easily influenced. So now let's go to bed, and tomorrow we'll do great things. Let's make a prior arrangement with the locksmith to have a locksmith on standby." Evelyn didn't know how to thank her friend, who had managed to forget the bitter insult she had suffered. All words seemed pathetic and empty. She was stunned by the breadth of Molly's soul and apologized again for having jeopardized a long-standing friendship because of a man who turned out to be a scoundrel. In the morning, Molly warned the head of the firm where she worked that she would appear at lunchtime, and together with Evelyn went to her apartment. John was already gone, and while the locksmith arrived to change the lock of the friend, they sorted out the products that could potentially be dangerous. They put jars and boxes into bags, and then got busy dumping John's belongings into suitcases. By the time the hired man handed the landlady a set of keys, everything was packed. After locking up the apartment, the girls drove to their first cafe, which had once been their joint project. On the way, Evelyn sent a text message to her accountant asking her to drive up to the building where the renovations were taking place. After making sure Miranda had left, the girlfriends entered the premises. Molly immediately began to study the information on the computer, since her successor had not even bothered to change the password. Evelyn, meanwhile, dialed the number of her mother, whom she didn't dare to upset last night, briefly explained the situation to her, and asked her not to answer John and his parents' calls if possible, and to leave town for a while or at least take care of the security measures. Evelyn, don't worry about us. We've been through worse than this. If anything, be sure to call us, we'll help you. Give my love and thanks to Molly. Your father and I will be there tonight, and even sooner if necessary. Evelyn thanked her mom and promised to keep her in the loop. She ended the conversation. Molly had by now found the documents necessary to expose the dishonest accountant and changed the password on the computer so that Miranda, when she came to her senses, would not be able to fix anything. The bustling life of the cafe went on as usual, and the staff had no idea that a real coup was underway. John was very surprised when he heard from Evelyn, who called him that she was filing for divorce. That's a very funny joke, my love, but today I dare remind you it's not April 1. Well, I've got a lot to do, so you can explain at home tonight what went through your charming head. All right? Kisses, my puffy. Evelyn looked at her friend in bewilderment. He didn't think I was serious about the divorce. Molly grinned not too kindly. He's sure you're still madly in love with him. But as far as I can tell, he's probably on the phone with his mistress at this very moment to see what's going on. The nasty couple will be here soon. Most likely they will come one at a time. Molly wasn't wrong. The friends had barely had time to sip a cup of coffee with the novelty of the menu when John appeared in the office. The man's handsome face, for a split second, contorted with a grimace when he saw his wife in Molly's company. However, he instantly took control of his emotions and said hello to his wife and then to her friend. Evelyn, I insist that you explain to me what happened on the business trip. Except this conversation is clearly not for anyone's ears. Molly, do you have the decency to leave me alone with my wife? She and I have a lot to discuss. Evelyn asked. John, we can't talk alone. If you want, let's discuss what you wanted to discuss. I'm listening to you carefully. The man was puzzled, but decided to ignore the woman who always put him off balance and raised his hands in the air, as if in a sign of joking capitulation, clarified. What's this unfortunate divorce joke? Evelyn spoke calmly, although it was necessary to clench her fists to the point of whitening her knuckles. No, John, I'm not kidding at all. We're getting a divorce, and it's finalized. I don't want to say why out loud. Besides, you know them very well. Tell me, what time can you come and get your things? Jean was not going to give up without a fight, and Evelyn, who had overheard his conversation with his mistress, understood why. It wasn't enough for him what he would have gotten in a fair divorce. He wanted to take a bite out of the family pie, a bigger and tastier piece. This comparison, unintentionally brought to mind, helped the woman even listen to her unfaithful husband with some humor. "Evelyn, I don't understand anything. I can only guess that Molly is involved in this whole situation. Beloved, if you want my opinion, such interference in purely family matters is out of line." Suddenly, Evelyn was even amused. "Well, my love, and I thought that you would dare to call me a fat cow or a skinny cow." The fright seen in her husband's gaze gave the woman confidence, and she continued, "You are mistaken if you think that Molly or anyone else but yourself is to blame for our divorce. I can't live with you anymore because you are a cheater, a traitor, and a two-faced man. You have completely lost my trust. So let me know when you can come get your stuff, and let's finish this useless conversation with you." John, that's self-control. That's chutzpah. Noticing her friend's confusion, Molly entered the unpleasant conversation. "I'm not going to moralize. It seems useless. Actually, the grounds for termination of the employment contract is more than enough. So, Miranda, it is better not to threaten, but to choose a less painful option of parting with your job. If you think about it, you'll realize Evelyn's suggestion is a real mercy. Most businessmen in her position, an accountant like you would have a fun life of litigation. And from the looks of it, John would hardly rush to the rescue. So you wonder what to do." Blushing, Miranda stalked out of the office. Her lover's behavior clearly indicated that he was not going to support her. John looked at Molly with hatred and then turned to Evelyn. "Okay, I get it. You need to chill out a bit. I'll drive up to the house tonight around 8:00 p.m., and we can talk in peace and hopefully without witnesses. By the way, Molly, why don't you get on with your personal life and stay out of ours?" The man left the office, slamming the door. Soon Molly, asking her friend to hold on, went to her workplace asking, "Shall I come up to your place tonight?" "I don't think you should go out alone with that creep. He's not going to be able to come up with anything." Evelyn shook his head. "Thanks, Molly. I guess it's not really necessary. My parents are coming over tonight, and you've done so much for me already. Although I'd love to see you. Maybe when the unpleasant part of John's visit is over, we can sit and talk like we used to." Molly looked at the screen of her smartphone and hurriedly said goodbye. "You know, I also missed our communication. I'll try to drive up without being late. I'm afraid John won't want to pick up his stuff peacefully. So if it's okay with you, I'm gonna take Robert with me. You remember him?" Evelyn, of course, remembered the classmate who was always trying to drive a wedge, but always failing. "Honestly, I didn't know he was in town. Didn't he leave? Anyway, sure, come by. We'll have a little reunion, and my parents will be happy. Plus, it'll put everyone in a different mood. Robert always knows how to be inconspicuous and the indispensable center of any company. I still wonder why you keep him at a distance, to be honest." Molly didn't answer the question, and making sure that her friend's thoughts were at least a little distracted from her troubles, she hurried away. She was indeed already almost late for work. John had prepared a real gentleman's set of reconciliation for the evening meeting with Evelyn, bringing with him a huge bouquet of her favorite flowers, a bottle of champagne, a decent brand, a baguette, and caviar. The man expected that the woman would not resist his charm and eloquence, as well as the delicacy. And with difficulty he suppressed a sigh of disappointment when the key failed to fit the lock. Because of this unexpected obstacle, his mood soured dramatically, but there was nothing to be done. He had planned to make peace with his wife, to beg her forgiveness so he could eliminate her later. Had to stand in front of the door, calming down, and wanted to get over his anger. When the rage-infused breath came back to normal, John pressed the call button. The fact that Evelyn was not alone in the apartment was another unpleasant surprise. His wife's parents stood behind their daughter's back with eloquent glances. But he, as if not noticing the bags and boxes in the hallway, said hello, crossed the threshold and spoke. "Evelyn, my love, we should at least try to negotiate this peacefully. And you've called in a whole support group. I meant it kindly. I meant it nicely. Maybe there's no reason for us to break up. I love you, you love me. Why do we need a divorce? Well, things happen in life. We all fall short of the ideal. We have to be able to correct our mistakes and work on our family relationships. Do you want me to confess my love to you in front of your parents? I'm still crazy about you. And you're all business. So I've made a mistake. What man doesn't have an easy affair? I swear, my love, I swear on anything. I'll never look at another man again. What do you think?" Evelyn was shocked for the umpteenth time by the behavior, so far, of her husband. How calmly he speaks, with flowers, with a bag. So confident in his charm and the success of the visit. He calls me his favorite. God, how can I get through this meeting without crying in front of this scoundrel? Evelyn grinned unhappily and answered, "Here's what I'm thinking, John. How did I manage to marry such a lying monster? Only about 24 hours ago, you and your mistress were planning to eliminate me quietly. And now you're trying to make a good impression, make up. You even swear, as sincere as it may seem, that you'll be faithful. Good thing I didn't say, 'till death do us part.' In the context of what I heard last night, that wouldn't even be funny. Get your stuff and get out of my life. Just so you know, if you do bad things, you'll be dealt with. Take your chances for a peaceful resolution." The irritation that John tried so hard to conceal came out. "I take it these bags, so kindly packed to avoid wasting my time, contain only clothes. Actually, as an official husband, I'm entitled to some of the equipment too." "Evelyn, did you really expect me to just take the clothes? But that's not even serious. You can't equate nobility with stupidity. I'll take everything I'm legally entitled to, so if you don't want to waste your nerves, we'll settle this amicably. Here's how it works. I'll take everything I'm entitled to, and we'll have a quiet divorce." Evelyn's father intervened in the conversation. "Dear son-in-law, you seem to have a law degree. Remind me, what is the penalty for planning to commit a crime, a group of persons by prior conspiracy? You still want to take the equipment? What would you need it for in prison? Can you give me a hint?" While John considered how to counter this more than serious accusation, Robert, whom he didn't even notice at first, almost under his elbow, but without using brute force, led the man out of the apartment of his almost ex-wife. Following in the stairwell were out of the bag. Separately, Evelyn took out a boxed set, presented at the wedding by her mother-in-law. Then she ran back into the room and brought out a sturdy bag containing the game console she'd once given her adoring husband. "Here's John. There's also discs in the bag. Play, have fun, but don't even try to reconnect with me. It's over. I realize you're a fool for your integrity, but please don't bother me again. Enough for the sake of all the good, bright, joyful things between us. There's no need for any more of this." John answered nothing and abruptly taking, almost snatching from Evelyn's hands, the objects dear to him, turned around and went to the elevator. Yes, going to meet his wife, he had expected a very different result. During the day, when Evelyn had uttered unflattering epithets, he had hoped that someone from the staff had told her about the hurtful words. Now it was clear his wife had found out about the insidious plan to eliminate her. Apparently, Miranda was right to be worried about the strange noise. "I should have gone yesterday to see what was going on. Maybe the situation would have turned out in his favor." Now the only thing left to do was to pack her bags and go to her mistress. Unlike John, who had been practically escorted out, the people left in Evelyn's apartment were in good spirits. Jenna and James, speaking in turn, suggested, "Stay with us for a while, Evelyn, while things calm down. In fact, let's all come over to our place now. We have specialty dumplings. We made a freezer full just yesterday." Robert smiled broadly, instantly remembering the hospitality of his former classmate's house. He didn't answer, however, leaving it up to Evelyn and Molly to decide. Evelyn and Molly looked at each other and nodded synchronously. Indeed, her apartment, betrayed by her husband, the woman now perceived desecrated. She decided to make repairs, at least cosmetic, and rearrange the furniture. She wanted to update the furnishings as much as possible so that nothing reminded not too long marriage. Having voiced her thoughts, the woman received the enthusiastic support of relatives and friends. Robert promised that in the near future he would call a reliable acquaintance who is engaged in repairs and will be able to carry out updates without nerves. Evelyn was grateful to her parents, who, sensing her mood, did not leave her alone and even arranged a small but well-fed and cheerful feast. After a little sitting with the young people, the hosts went to their room, and the 3 former classmates were engrossed in memories of funny school pranks. "Listen, Robert, what made you come back to the city of your childhood? There were rumors that you opened a hotel complex somewhere in the South." Evelyn asked. The rumors were right, but as always, a little distorted. "I was actually living in the South, renovating my grandparents' house. My parents live there now, and they like the climate better than here. I also put a guest house on the plot so that my sister's family would have an autonomous dwelling. This building is far from being a hotel complex. Yes, and not for profit it was built, but without too much modesty to say, very cozy turned out. But I didn't want to stay there in the South forever. I have a heartfelt interest here. I lived a little away and realized that I can't go on. I've had enough of being a bachelor. And I'm tired of being afraid that someone more brazen will steal her away. Finally, I'm so happy for you guys. Of course, I'll organize a wedding cake of your choice and design. Just tell me what date." The evening, which had started so tense, even unpleasantly ended with a pleasant conversation discussing the details of the wedding. Evelyn was pleased for her friend and cautiously asked, "Molly, do you want to work with me again? In addition to a salary and a percentage of sales will be. Of course, I understand that you need to think about it. Well, if you don't want to, maybe you can recommend someone." Molly didn't lie. "You know, I think everything always works out for the best. This job that I have, I'm happy with it. And frankly, there's one more thing that's stopping me." Molly was silent, and then she turned to Robert. "Can I tell you one more of our secrets?" After a kiss on the cheek, which was decoded as permission, Molly told her friend about her pregnancy. "Well, that's the reason we decided to rush the wedding. Kind of like having the baby in a legal marriage. So, you know, there's no point in you hiring me. Maternity pay and sick leave, then let me go with the baby." Evelyn was glad that Molly and Robert, who had been waiting for her favor for so long, had settled down, and wished them nothing but happiness in her life. Things were complicated, however. John's parents overpowered her, persuading her both on the phone and in person that Evelyn must necessarily forgive her straying husband. Cindy's mother-in-law came to her almost ex-sister-in-law at work and began to lament to Evelyn. "Why are you mad at John? All men cheat, but some men manage to hide their affairs. John's an honest guy. He's not in the habit of lying. You should appreciate that. So right now in front of me, call and make an appointment with him." She's offended. If you ask me, Oscar Wilde was right when he said that resentment is the lot of maids. People who are self-confident don't allow themselves to feel that way. Enough of this nonsense. As far as I know, John is already desperate and does not even expect you to respond favorably to his initiatives. Why don't you take steps toward reconciliation? Think about it. You're 25 years old, not exactly the freshest commodity on the marriage market. Divorced, even without a trailer, it's still not good enough. All you've got is an odd business in a field where competition is huge and ruin at any moment threatens, and arrogance. So pick up the phone, make the call. What are you waiting for? Evelyn, tired of listening to moralizing, gloomy forecasts, veiled remarks, insults, direct orders. So she said, "Dear Cindy, that's enough. I have endured listening to you for a long time, but I will not be silent any longer. I'm not divorcing your wonderful son just because he was having an affair behind my back with an accountant. I don't know how John put it to you, but cheating is nothing. What I never expected when I got married was that my spouse would get so tired of me that he would plan to physically eliminate me, and then bury me, or better yet, turn me to ashes. You should be glad I didn't report him and his girlfriend to the police. Not even those traitors, but you and your husband. It's hard to imagine what respectable parents can feel when they find out they raised a scoundrel. I hope you realize now that I will not call you, let alone reconcile with your son." Cindy said her goodbyes and left. Evelyn mentally reproached herself for not holding back and telling her mother-in-law the hard truth. But now she could be sure that there would be no more requests for reconciliation from her. Divorce and division of property was not smooth. However, with the help of an experienced lawyer who was recommended by Evelyn Robert, she managed to keep the entire chain of establishments. John gritted his teeth, as it was possible to prove the fact of repeated misappropriation of money from the accounts of his wife, Miranda. The man had to help his mistress out of this delicate situation because she promised to keep silent about the crime that they were planning. In fact, it turned out that John, after 3 years of married life, had only acquired a car. In addition, he had to move out of the cozy Evelyn apartment. With his parents, after the truth was revealed to his mother, he quarreled. Avoiding to upset her husband, Cindy did not tell him about the meanness that her son was planning. But the man was not happy without it and reprimanded John for parting with his clever wife. Miranda, her lover's parents, took it in stride. She, right at the time of acquaintance, capriciously declared that the negative attitude to himself is not going to tolerate, and John had to urgently look for a conveniently located rental apartment. Since the one rented by his mistress was far from the office, the man had to leave some of his things at his parents' place. Cindy, sorting out the bags and boxes at her son's request, sighed bitterly when she discovered that several teacups had been damaged during the move. So believed the omens about broken dishes and good luck, the woman thought. She felt sorry for her son, but even more ashamed of Evelyn for his unfortunate scheme. Indeed, such a thing from John, whom she and her husband had tried to bring up properly, a good man, she could not have expected in any way. There was nothing wrong for Evelyn in her new status as a divorcee, as her mother-in-law characterized it. The woman felt free and even happy. She decided to get rid of the room where she had overheard Joan talking to Miranda. Of course, it wasn't the Walls' fault that they were silent witnesses to a nefarious plan, but she didn't want to be constantly reminded of the negativity. She had to pay a small penalty to the owners, but Evelyn canceled the lease with the opening of the third cafe. The woman decided not to be in a hurry, but to pay close attention to the existing one, and without rushing to look for a new premises, the location of which will be more successful, thanks to the fact that Molly gladly accepted from Evelyn help in preparing for the wedding celebration. In the first month after the divorce was no time to think about how to continue to live after the terrible betrayal. In addition, it was necessary to look after the repair of the apartment, and of course, with particular trepidation, Evelyn and her assistants worked on the wedding cake. The products were not of the most standard type, but no one from the team was intimidated by the difficulties. As a result, the cake turned out to be a real work of art and became not only a wonderful decoration, but also an excellent dessert. Evelyn, although worried about her brainchild, had fun, as did the other guests. And she wished Molly and Robert well from the bottom of her heart. She was pleased to feel the gentle atmosphere of other people's happiness, and for the first time since she had met them, she felt nothing else but joy for their old acquaintances. There was no resentment and anger, no disappointment and despair. She was completely free of resentment. It was truly a wonderful feeling. Evelyn was learning to move on with her life. Though her parents did not kick her out of the apartment where the woman's childhood had been spent, she moved in. The kitchen and bathroom were barely renovated. I can sleep on the kitchen sofa, and in the daytime I am not at home, so there will be no inconvenience. The team of specialists, recommended by Robert's acquaintances, really worked qualitatively and quickly, and at the final settlement, Evelyn asked Mason, the main one from the team, "In about 3 months, or a little more, I will need to do some renovations in the room that will be used as a cafe pastry shop. There will, of course, be some nuances involved with both the finishes and the purpose of the room. Is it okay if I offer you such a job?" Mason was happy to respond, "Sure. If you want, I can visit the site soon, estimate the scope of work, preliminary estimate, of course. How long will it take to repair and the approximate cost? The thing is that there is no object yet," Evelyn admitted. "I can't find a room that meets all my requirements." When asked by the foreman about what the woman wants so special, she said that the location is important to her, what institutions are located in the neighborhood, the condition of the building and communications, and of course, the cost of rent. And then she suddenly came to her senses and laughed. "Oh, I'm holding you up. I got carried away. Sorry, have a good day." The foreman, saying goodbye, promised to let me know if he heard about such an ideal room from Evelyn's point of view. The woman took it as a gesture of simple politeness. But a week later, she did receive a call from Mason. The man offered an option that seemed fabulous to Evelyn. After hearing the address, however, she grew sad. "Thank you, Mason, for your trouble. But in that neighborhood, the cost of rent is too high for me." However, the man insisted that Evelyn should definitely call the owner. The owner's phone number is William. I'll text it to you right now. The interesting thing is that once 10 years ago, I was one of those who did the finishing work in this room. Call, maybe you can negotiate a discount. About your desire to open a cafe in a place like this, I told him briefly. In general, try, after all, for the demand for money do not take money. Evelyn thanked the inadvertent helper in the search of the premises, and barely after receiving the message, made a call. William had indeed been alerted by Mason, but offered to meet for a detailed discussion directly at the premises the woman was interested in. Evelyn suggested that the business-like conversation, which had begun with a discussion of the details of the contract, continue at one of her 2 cafes. "William, I think you will be able to understand that your premises are optimally suited to my wishes and purpose." The imposing man agreed, but after the meal he grinned and said, "Evelyn, everything was delicious, and you are a real pro in the culinary arts. I'm sorry, but you're being very naive when it comes to negotiating a lease. Why are you making your interests so obvious? It's only natural that it would increase the rent, but I'm not going to profit from you." The man made a good discount, and after a while he became a guest of the new establishment. Not immediately, but a romantic relationship began between William and Evelyn. On the anniversary of the opening, the cafe was closed. Inside celebrated the wedding of newlyweds, whose destinies were linked by this room. 10 years later, William and Evelyn had a son and a daughter. The woman was happy, and about her unsuccessful first marriage, practically did not remember, until her cart collided with another cart at the supermarket. Evelyn began to apologize and was surprised to see Miranda standing in front of her. There was almost nothing left of the former beauty. Even her eyes had recently turned bright blue, as if they'd been watered down. Undoubtedly, she recognized her lover's ex-wife too, because she pushed Evelyn's cart and followed her. John, once so trim, turned from the perpendicular row of racks on which were located, according to the sign Beer and Snacks, a stooped, gaunt man, who seemed to have fallen firmly under Miranda's heel, caused Evelyn's bewilderment. Had I ever been so hurt by his betrayal? The woman mentally even thanked fate for the pain she had to go through. But now, everything was perfect.